And that's the heartbreaking story of just one child who lost his life this week. And to discuss this and the general situation for children in Gaza, I'm joined by Nabeel, Euromed Monitor's spokesperson in the Palestinian territory. Thank you very much for joining us today, Nada, on A News.
Thank you for having me tonight, sir.
Just to set a context, we've just been looking at the story of the death of one 7-year-old boy, Amir Ayad, who died on Tuesday. Now, I've spoken with someone who knew him personally, and I believe he's recently moved to a new school, was making new friends, was doing exceptionally well in his classes, and apparently had an angelic smile and an energetic soul. So this is a child like any child around the world. But can you tell us what is the reality?
In the Gaza Strip, of course, their reality is very difficult and is very complicated because simply they are targeting without doing anything. For example, during the last 3 days, our teams at Euromed have been documenting what is happening in the Gaza Strip during the recent offensives. We have been documenting the killing of 34 people, including 8 children, and the injury of 109 people, including 51 children. And of course, we have documenting hundreds of children who evacuated their homes along their families. So these numbers tell us that children are one of the most affected categories in the Gaza Strip whenever there is any attack or offensive. And the most difficult part about this issue is that we cannot protect the children here in Gaza. Their families, their parents cannot protect them because they can be targeted in everywhere. They are targeted when they are playing football in the streets, or even when they are sleeping in their beds. We have documented many stories for children who have been killed by Israeli forces. They are only civilians sleeping in their beds or playing with their neighbors, with their friends in the street.
And in fact, it's very easy for people who are not living in the situation that the Palestinians are living in Gaza to not to fully understand and appreciate that we're talking about real people, real children, just like the boy next door, the girl next door, the family down the street. And as you say, these are, I believe Amir was on his way to school with his father and brother. This must be very difficult for children to come to.
That is imposed by Israel is beyond imagination. People outside of Gaza cannot even imagine the life of the Gazans, and specifically of the children, because as I have just said, it's beyond imagination. The population of Gaza is 1.6 million, and half of them is children. And if we want to show some facts about how those people are spending their life, or how their life looks like, for example, about 40% of the people in Gaza are living in poverty. About 45% of them are food insecure. About 40% of them are unemployed. Even water. Over 90% of the water in Gaza is undrinkable. So if you can note that children represents the majority of, half of the population of Gaza, and they are by default one of the most categories that is affected by these facts, noting that the children of Gaza do not enjoy any right that children around the world are enjoying, like the right to freedom of movement, the right to health, right to dignity, right to good education. If we want to take an example, the children who are 13 years old now, they were born and found themselves in an Israeli blockade that put restrictions on the life of Gazans. They only have 7 hours electricity per a day. They cannot, they do not, and they cannot even travel outside of Gaza. So they only know just a small area of land which is called Gaza.
Right.
Their education is very difficult. Imagine that about 85% of the schools in Gaza are working on 2 shifts, and there are schools that work in 3 shifts. And the shocking fact that is the one class in these schools contain more than 50 students. So as you know, even the education the education process in the Gaza Strip is difficult and complicated, and those children have spent the whole of their life in dark due to the electricity shortage. So Israeli blockade that is imposed on the Gaza Strip, and that is tightened year after a year, make our life, and specifically the life of children, complicated and difficult. We also have to remember that those children have been through 3 offensives during the last 13 years, and they are subject to continued attacks and offensives in Gaza, like the recent one that happened before 3 years. So the Israeli blockade on the Gaza Strip make our life, the life of children, very difficult, and Israel hasn't respect the rights of those children, even though that Israel has ratified the Convention of Children. But it seems that Israel cannot turn this convention into actions when it comes to the Palestinian children.
So under these very harsh conditions, they're struggling to go to school, even going to school. I heard Amir was going to school on Tuesday under the shelling. He still went to school. What is the future then for the children of Gaza?
Of course, the future of the children of Gaza is difficult, and I cannot say that there is a hope to have a better or a good future for them, because year after year the life of Gazans get more difficult, and it is unbearable. For example, about 4 or 5 years ago, UN has released a full detailed report about the reality of Gazans and the life of Gaza, and this report indicates that life in Gaza will be unlivable by 2020, and we are about to enter 2020, and the life of Gazans hasn't been changed, and there is no hope to change, to have a change on this life, because under the facts that I have mentioned about the poverty, the unemployment, lack of job opportunities, bad education, undrinkable water, crossing borders. So I cannot even predict a good future for those children.
Right, and they must be under tremendous psychological strain going through their development stages and struggling with untold difficulties.
Of course, following all these facts that I have mentioned about the life in Gaza and about the children in Gaza, life on Gaza, including all the difficulties and the continued offensive, has impacted the children, especially their psychological life. For example, Gaza program Health, which is one of the major programs concerning psychological level of Gazans. According to them, there are about 20% of children who joined this program are suffering from urinary disorder, and 13% of the other children are suffering from post-traumatic stress. And the sad thing that there are about 25% of the children joining this program that cannot be diagnosed because their level of bad psychological life, it cannot be handled by the doctor. So they even can have only activities for stress relief. And sadly, there is no enough programs concerning psychological treatment for those children. And this is normal because people here in Gaza are busy with offering the basic needs for their children, like food and water and school stuff.
So just coming back to where I started, remembering Amir as a normal 7-year-old boy who was going to school, trying to make new friends at a new school. What is the difference between the life of a child growing up in Gaza and any, let's just say, normal child elsewhere in the world?
Actually, having a comparison between these two categories is not fair enough. We are here talking about, about children who live in a conflict zone, who have gone through 3 major offensives and continued attacks on the strip. They are deprived from their basic needs. They have undrinkable water. Their education is bad. Their psychological level is life is bad. They don't have good food. They are food insecure. Their parents are depending on relief organizations, and they haven't gone outside of Gaza for years, and they do not have electricity. And on the other hand, we are talking about children who are enjoying all these things and all these rights by guarantee. So I think the comparison here cannot be made, actually.
A fair point, and a very sad one at the same time. Thank you very much for that insight into the lives of children in Gaza. Nabeel from the Euromed Monitor. Thank you for joining us on A News.